Okay. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of On the Rush from Off the Cuff. Today we're coming at you with installment number 2 of the Ginault Ocean Rover review. So a little bit about Ginault. Again, they were founded in 2012. They are based out of the USA. And basically, they are a micro-brand startup with their eye on the higher end homage niche. So basically, they definitely have staked their claim with this model, the Ocean Rover, as kind of being the best Submariner homage out there. And, you know, I figured the best thing to do, let's start off with comparing it against kind of the top dogs as far as the Swiss Made Submariner homage scene goes, and kind of get a good baseline so you can get an idea of where this piece stands kind of in the grand scheme of things. One thing I did kind of want to bring out as a bit of a as a bit of a little comparison, because I know there are some that are just going to say, oh, well, homage watches, you know, I wouldn't spend more than, you know, X amount of money on those because I can just get an Invicta and it gives me everything, you know, for the same amount of money, yada, yada, yada. So I decided to bring an Invicta into the fray. Now, this is one of their newer Swiss-made models, and it actually has a sunburst gray dial and a that kind of metallic charcoal bezel insert. And this one is Swiss-made. It has a Sellita SW200. But for those of you that kind of just say, okay, well, I can have a sub homage and that has everything that this watch has, you know, for very cheap. Yeah, this is you know, a $200 watch from Invicta. It doesn't have sapphire, but it has, you know, their sapphire compound, which is basically a sapphire coat on top of a mineral crystal. As you can see, you know, the Cyclops doesn't quite magnify as large as probably as it should. The indices are a bit small. Just the general finish on it, I mean, it's good enough quality. I mean, for the price, the fact that it's Swiss made, has a Swiss movement and everything, automatic. I mean, it's definitely pretty impressive for the money, but just the level of finish, just so you guys can kind of get a baseline for those of you that are already, you know, kind of writing off homage watches, just the way that this clasp feels, the finishing. I just want you to take a look at that first. All right, just take a look at some of these edges, kind of the general finishing, right? Okay, no diver's extension or anything like that. Very simple piece. All right, nice display back, I'll give Invicta that. Very cool custom rotor. But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, nice rotating bezel, nothing wrong with it whatsoever. Not a bad piece, honestly. So if there are those of you that are saying, hey, I wouldn't spend, you know, more than a couple $100 on a homage watch, here's the one for you. It definitely isn't too bad, not too shabby at all. But I just kind of wanted to set that baseline there before we move on to some of the more heavy hitters. Now, so let's cover first what we have here. We have right here, we have the no date version of the Davosa Ternos diver. So basically, the Davosa has been around for a while. It's actually a newer brand. They actually were established. The Davosa name was established only just in 1987. They do have roots tying all the way back to kind of 1861, but you know, they're very much a young brand, and you know, they have built a lot of their reputation on some of their homage watches. Same thing for Squall. Squall goes right here. We have the 20 Atmos Classic. Which does have the date and the magnifier, which we'll get a better look at. But essentially, you know, everybody knows Squall. They're very popular right now. I'd say they're kind of, you know, the small time version of Tudor as far as how much they're really popular and hot right now, and kind of it's the cool watch, kind of hipster watch at this point. So very hip brand, and they're definitely doing the right things. And these are just two of their models as far as Davosa and Squall go. And of course, Squall was actually established in the 50s, and they used to make cases, but essentially still a family-owned business. And a very acceptable sub homage, as far as when you see one, this is one that's going to garner definitely more respect than the Invicta. Same thing with the Davosa. I think I'd say probably general consensus is that the Davosa is held in a slightly higher regard than the Squall in case finishing and whatnot, but this is actually the Mark II version of the Squall, so it does have some improvements on it that you will see here. And then the Davosa is still pretty much the tried and true, but this is the more rare no date version, so that I think that definitely makes it a little bit more comparable to the Ginault Ocean Rover. I'm just going to tell you guys right now, I'm not going to get too much into the details on the Squall and the Davosa, because I will be doing a more of a direct comparison between those two, because I believe that, if you're kind of in the market for one, you've probably looked at the other. I don't know if that's the case with the Ginault. I think it's a very special kind of buyer that I think is looking for the Ginault, and that's that type of buyer and that type of market share, I think, where the Ginault fills is just a different space. But I did want to definitely compare the watches all together here in a quick video. So, well, I'll try to keep it quick anyway. So let's first take a look at the Davosa, because there aren't too many videos of these out there. And so basically, as you can see, it does have a ceramic insert, which is very nice, and it has applied indices. It also has that nice lacquered, very reflective and glossy dial, as all three of the models here do have nice solid end links, screw in, of course, very nice. The Invicta was push pins, so this is going to use screws, but still, very similar basic stamped clasp here, as you can see. But check the finishing here. It's a little bit dirty, but let me try to wipe that for you. A little dirty, but you can tell it's definitely it's quite a bit nicer as far as the kind of the unsightly areas here. And this actually does have a dive extension, which is very nice. So very basic affair there. Case back, not the deepest etching there, but as you can see, still very nicely executed. Signed crown, pretty much has all the bells and whistles, very nicely done. And it has these have a very good reputation for a reason. They are executed very well, and they do follow a very similar pattern as far as what they are doing in comparison to the Ginault. It also is paying tribute to the older Rolex case before they went with the more broad shoulders, except they're modernizing it by adding the ceramic. So, and then also leaving the smaller indices versus the maxi style indices. So this does have a couple of although it's definitely a sub homage, it has its own characteristics. This also has a AR coating, as you can see there, which is blue, and which is something that even the Rolex Submariner doesn't have. So that's quick shot of that. And then we have the Squall, which is a little bit more comparable in that it also uses an aluminum bezel insert. But as you can see, in comparison to the Invicta, if I can pull that back, that's one of the keys when what you're looking for when you look at a watch that has a Cyclops is the magnification. And as you can see, the magnification is much better on the Squall. So although, yeah, the Squall is going to be, double the price of this Invicta, it definitely, I'd say, is definitely offering double the refinement. I don't know about double the spec, you know, just in basic spec, you know, kind of objectively, but in a lot of the subjective regions where, you know, you can kind of, yes, it has a magnifier, but it does magnify better though. So, but again, very standard affair. Here, the links are slightly different than you'll see. They're a little bit more squared off than you'll see on the Davosa or the Ginault. Very standard clasp, very similar to the Davosa. Very clean. This one didn't need to be wiped down or anything like that. Here, very nice finishing in kind of those detail areas. And one of the nice things about the Squall is that they actually even have a little bit of extra finishing here on the diver's extension. So as you can see, it has actually like a blasted finish with also some high polished accents there, which I can definitely appreciate. So, and then of course case back, very standard affair there. Flat sapphire, also has an AR coating, so depending on the light when it hits it, you can catch a couple of those hints of blue there. But it does have a very nice glossy and clean dial. Also is going with the smaller indices there, kind of paying more tribute to the older Rolexes before they went with the maxi sizes, but definitely larger than, let's compare again to the Invicta here. And actually Ginault has recently just released kind of a limited run of some of the prototypes when they were going through kind of figuring out what the Ocean Rover would be. They actually came out with a smaller indice model that uses C1, also has a date and a Cyclops. So hopefully we'll have that on the channel for review at some point, but right now we're really covering kind of their first basically flagship model here in the Ginault Ocean Rover. So now that you've kind of seen what's there, I mean, I want you to take a look at this end link here, right? Do you see how sharp and crisp that end link is as far as the lines on it? The gap is definitely very good tolerances there, but I mean, just look at this line here on this center link, how crisp that is. Now I want you to compare that to the Squall. Do you see how it's just a lot more rounded off? I mean, this is a nice watch. Don't get me wrong. This is a $500 watch, but I mean, if you just look at that, it just doesn't have that same crisp sharpness here. I mean, this is just very standard. I wouldn't say that it's, you know, it's not a poorly executed. I just think it's just a very standard end link versus what you have here. Now, Ginault not only paid tribute to the look of Rolex, it actually pays a lot of homage to the quality and the craftsmanship. You know, as you can see there, that is just finely machined and milled. I mean, that's just one aspect of it, and then you just kind of take a closer look, just all over. I mean, the mid case here, as you can see, very slim profile. Yes, there is, you know, that bubble back, case back, and then plus, you know, the higher sapphire, which does make this a thicker watch, you know, but it doesn't wear thicker because of that thin mid case. And, you know, one of the great things is, as you can see, very, you know, finely finished. Let me make sure that this gets into focus here. There we go. Very finely finished bracelet here. The brushing is just very, very nice. The edges here along, it just has a nice almost softened edge here. So it's not sharp by any means, but it's not rounded through due to a lack of precision. It's just a fine detail. They brought the polishing out to really round that out. And then the break here from the brushing to the polish right there on those lugs, very sharp, you know, extremely high quality, you know, especially compared to the vintage you know, Rolexes that it's based on. And now instead of having that kind of generic clasp here that you'll find on many homage watches, you're actually getting a glide lock. Yeah, I'm sure it's a copy, but it's a good copy of a better system. And as you can see, it's just in general, it's a higher quality piece there. It's more solid, actually is finished quite nice, and it actually does function well. So if you wanted to use this as a dive extension, you could, right there. It's just that easy. And then, you know, of course you can use it for quick adjust, and it's very functional. Even with the gloves, it was still, you know, relatively easy to use. You know, as you can see, also screw links, you know, that's kind of standard, you know, kind of in this game of having all the specs. But look, now we have some of the differences where the Ginault feels a bit more original in that they did go with, you know, a slight patina, and I really love the tone of the patina that comes on this for this loom here. And then also with the maxi indices, and I feel like seeing the maxi indices, you know, with the mill sub sword hands and that kind of yacht master like red seconds hand, I think it's just a really great look, and it does add a little bit of charisma, and it just it feels like, you know, something that could have been out during that period. You know, this feels like this could have been a release by Tudor, or, you know, one of many other brands that did sub homages. You know, back in the 60s and 70s, there was a ton. I mean, if you just look at some vintage Edox divers, you know, Tag Heuers, there's a lot of vintage. I shouldn't say Tag Heuer, but vintage Heuers. So there's definitely a lot of, you know, companies that did, you know, plenty of dive watches that came and went that aren't even around today, that came out with these really cool kind of, there's a whole sub market of Submariner homages, and they're just, I love the little variances and all the little differences, you know, but I mean, just the quality of bezel action in here, if you can hear that, it's just lovely. I mean, this is just really, really nice, and the quality is just there, 100% there. Let me go ahead and throw this on. So we actually, you know what? Let's do a loom shot before I throw this on here. And just so you guys can get a comparative look at the loom here, we'll zoom in. Okay, let me try to get everything centered so you guys can catch this. I will go ahead and charge these bad boys up. Okay. So as you can see, you know, I think you can tell from the video that the Ginault really stands on its own. Yes, it does have, you know, larger handset, larger indices, so it's going to generally be brighter. But I mean, the quality of the loom itself is actually quite bright in comparison. I think the Squall pales a little bit in comparison to what the Davosa has to offer, but I think the Ginault is just another step up as far as that brightness goes. And I think it's just another one of those things where there's just those little key things that can tip the scales, you know, when you're interested in one of these watches. And, you know, let's go ahead. Actually, let's start off with the Davosa. This video's running long, of course. Let's get that on wrist. As you can see, wears really nicely. I think it wears probably slightly larger because of the way that this bezel, the thickness is on it. But one of the things you'll see here on the Davosa is the reholt is, you know, much more at a better angle, I'd say. It doesn't really show as much versus the Squall, which we'll take a look at right here. And so the Squall, as you can see, the angle on that reholt there, you see it? You can just see more of that, you know, basically that metal there, and it makes the dial appear smaller, and that's something that is something to look out for, of course, on replicas, but on homage watches as well. You can kind of see, as you can see, definitely this dial on the Ginault feels much bigger. You know, another one that where you can kind of see that angled rehault that makes the and pardon me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Not the, you know, I'm not some huge horologist or anything. Definitely the channel's title is Average Bros. So as you can see, definitely not quite as small dialed as the Invicta. I think the Invicta even scrunches it down a little bit more there, as you can see. But you know, that's something to look at, and I think that's one of the places where the Squall also falls a little bit short. And let me put it on wrist here. I think it wears nicely. The bezel is a bit thicker than on the Davosa and on the Ginault, but it also is a little bit easier to grip. It has more of a notchy feel, I'd say, compared to the Davosa, and then of course the Ganal definitely feels much smoother. But you know, it definitely wears really well. I'd say the taper, you know, as you can see, it does taper down to 18 millimeters, but it really, since it's a very thin clasp, you know, it doesn't taper down as much as the Ginault, as you're going to see here in a second. The Ginault actually tapers down to a 16 millimeter link with an 18 millimeter clasp. So much deeper taper on there, which visually to me, I think really makes it wear much nicer. And then of course, you know, physically it's also more comfortable because of that taper. Now you see the way that wears now, and just on the wrist, I think it just gives you a greater sense of quality visually. I think just even looking at it, you know, on my camera screen there, I think you can see the difference in quality. And I will tell you that I can definitely feel the difference in quality. So not that these two watches by any means are, you know, subpar, and you know, I think these are great bang for buck. I don't know, you know, if you would be satisfied with either of these watches if you were looking at the Ginault. If you want the Ginault, you know, really the only way you're probably going to get something this satisfying is, you know, ponying up the money for you know, a 90s Submariner, whether it be from Tudor or from Rolex, because the quality on here is really just that good. Except, you know, in this case, you'd be paying much less versus paying for vintage, and you're going to have, you know, better quality bracelet, to be honest, and better quality as far as the clasp, because, you know, Rolex did improve those things over time. You know, really this case style would have been accompanied with, you know, folded end links that were hollow and, you know, just a stamped clasp. So this is definitely a step up from a vintage. Of course, it doesn't have, you know, the history and the horological chops or anything like that, but just, I would say, actually objectively, the quality is something definitely very special. As you can see, even the crystal, it just has that beautiful, there's so many little fine details with the Ginault that you'll find, things that really kind of give it just more presence. It's a total package versus, you know, yeah, these items, I guess, you know, you could say that they're total packages in that, you know, they have all the specs Swiss made, you know, ETA 2824, you know, they have the Mercedes hands, they have the Submariner style dial, Submariner style case, whatnot. So they are a total package in that sense, but as far as just, I'd say, watches on their own, and kind of what they contribute to the legacy of the Submariner, I'd say, you know, not really that much. This is definitely a hey, I'd like to own a Submariner one day type of watch, and I think that's just pretty much really all it is. All these watches are, and they're very nice, and I definitely prefer them to the Steinhardts, just because the Steinhardts, I feel like the scale is a bit off as far, because they did kind of bulk up the size on those. Now the Ginault, on the other hand, I feel like it does. It just has something very special. This is not just a watch for somebody that wants a Submariner one day. Honestly, I think this is even a watch for people that own Submariners, people that enjoy vintage subs, whether they're trying to track down a $4,000 or $5,000 a Tudor Submariner, maybe a Snowflake, or just a regular vintage sub, just because the aesthetic that this thing has is just fantastic, and the quality is amazing as well. So I mean, I'll definitely talk about that, kind of the market share that I believe the Ginault Ocean Rover kind of falls into, and probably the next video I think I'll do is I will compare the Ginault to original watches that are kind of in the same price range. I'd say, I'll compare it to my Longines Hydro Conquest, and probably the Christopher Ward Trident Vintage. So I think that's a kind of a happy median for original designs, and maybe I'll throw in, instead of having the Invicta make a guest appearance, I'll probably have a guest appearance from the Helson Shark Diver 40, and kind of just talk about your other options if you want something that's original but definitely has that Submariner kind of alternative feel to it. So I know this was a longer video, but again, so much to say about this piece. So go ahead, if you like the video, please do hit like. If you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe, and definitely let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks guys. Bye.